Hey, I want to make a video going over how I specifically play the new Symmetra. I mentioned in the last video how I play the game in general, and if you haven't seen that video, it'll be the first link in the description. But this video I want to go over how I've adapted to the rework. In my personal opinion, the rework is objectively better, but it could have been handled differently and ended up hurting disabled players that played Symmetra in the process. That's why I want to make this video for any other disabled players that played Symmetra 2.0 and are now struggling to adapt to the new Symmetra. And it's just a heads up, I'll put some timestamps in the description for each topic I talk about for anyone just wanting to skip to certain parts. So the first thing I want to start off with, and I may get some flack for saying this, but in my opinion, communication isn't that important in this game in general unless you're on an actual team. I know that some people might disagree with that, but also remember that I'm a Symmetra main and I play the game with one hand, and I've met some pretty toxic people when it comes to both of those things.
I have an idea, right? Ready? Now, this is just me spitballing for you, right?
Okie dokie.
Maybe play a different game.
Report this guy, dude.
Okie dokie.
Game sabotage.
Why are you playing competitive? Why are you in the competitive queue if you're gonna play fucking Symmetra? If you have one hand or whatever the fuck, go play quick play until you die of your disease from having one hand.
It's better to avoid tilting than trying to get the minor benefits of comms. That said though, I would say that Symmetra 3.0 benefits from communication more than any hero in the game. Again, communication isn't required because I don't want any disabled players to feel like the comms I just showed are required to put up with, but she does benefit from it a lot. I'll touch on this a bit more throughout the video, but in general the reason is that the new Symmetra has a lot of ways to help the team out, but at times people don't realize how you're trying to help them. The new Symmetra is, well, new, and has a low pick rate, so people aren't really used to her. I still run into people who don't even have interact bound yet. Now in the last video I said that Symmetra is now a much more difficult hero for one-handed players, at least for me. However, she's still probably one of the best heroes out there for disabled players once you get the rhythm down. If you can get really good with her, you can do a lot. I still say she's the best hero for indirect action, while heroes like McCree and Widow are the best hero for direct action, because those heroes are much more straightforward, at least compared to Symmetra, while Symmetra has a lot of ways to help the team out without having to get frustrated with the issues that come with playing with one hand. A lot of people already touched on how you have to use your alt fire a lot more than you use your primary. For me, I also depend a lot more on my abilities in general than my gun. It's partly because you actually can depend on them a lot more now, since their setup time is a lot lower than it was before. The old Symmetra, it took about a minute and a half to fully set up all turrets, but with the current Symmetra, it only takes about 30 seconds. It's also because her abilities are just a lot more powerful than before. Turrets deal 50 DPS, almost as much as Winston. Her teleporter is also only down for about 2 seconds once it self-destructs. Meanwhile, her primary fire is a lot slower to ramp up, and her alt fire can be a bit high risk, high reward in terms of aiming, at least compared to turrets. Your abilities are just so much more reliable now, while your primary and alt fire aren't, especially with the removal of auto lock from your primary. So in the end, you really have to depend on your abilities a lot more. When it comes to turrets, I like to think of them as mini players. They deal a significant amount of damage now and control an area a lot better, so it's really good to just stick by them. If you only have one fully charged alt fire on someone, you can rely on the turret to clean them up for you. You can also kind of overwhelm your opponent. It's hard to explain, but when people start getting zapped by a turret, they kind of tend to panic. I think it has to do with the sound or something, but whatever it is, it leads to them making more mistakes. If an opponent decides to turn around to break the turret, they also tend to not really move while turning, so you can land another fully charged shot on them. It's also good to sometimes keep a turret by your supports to help them out if a flanker starts to attack them, especially when you're off trying to do something else. That's one reason why communication can be so helpful, since a lot of times your teammates will just fight just outside of a turret's range. Notifying them to get a little bit closer to it can really help them out at times. On tech payload maps, I tend to put 1 or 2 turrets on the back of the payload just because I like to stick to the point, and someone always tries to jump right behind it. Behind the payload is also just out of the line of sight of snipers. One last thing about turrets is to use them to gather information. Throwing them in an area you're unsure of or to just watch for a flank allows you to see when the turret goes active or breaks from a safe distance, and that allows you to know when someone's over there. If it does break or go active, you know someone's there. If not, then you know someone's at least not within 10 meters of it. I used to do this a lot more with the old Symmetra since there were 6 turrets and you could control a much larger area, but it's still something you can take advantage of now, just not as well. Now the teleporter has a lot of different options. I'll try to get through all the ways I use them, though I'll probably forget some, but the point is to look at things from every possible angle. All of these options are answers to the question, what can something that can instantly move someone on my team in a 25-meter range vertically and horizontally do? We're just trying to figure out here what are all the aspects of this ability. To start off, the main benefit of having a teleporter is that it's very easy to get through a choke with the team. You can just teleport everyone past them, and now they're the ones trying to fight for the point from you. However, if they react fast enough, you can very easily get screwed over by this. You can also just teleport your team around to flanks they normally couldn't reach, like the left side of Volskaya at point A. Just watch out for any sort of boops. It's usually best just to have your main tank be on the lookout. Teleporting ult is fun, but it seems most people just plainly don't know how to do it. For D.Va, her mech has to either be moving through an already placed teleporter, or the teleporter has to be placed on the mech. If you place the mech on an already placed teleporter, you can just nudge it through though, and you'll be fine. For Junkrat, you need to use interact on the tire. In case you're wondering, your person actually can't be teleported while you're using tire. For any ult involving your person, like Pharah or McCree, you can just use teleporter the same way you always do. Sadly, things like Pulse Bomb and Snowball can't go through teleporter. Telly is still really beneficial on defense. One of the main ways I use it is to get people back from spawn. You can also just place the teleporter on two sides of the point to get out of a bad situation. Even if it's just 10 meters or so, most enemies tend to back off once you teleport away, because usually there's someone else between you and them. That may sound like you're just throwing that person under the bus, but you've caused the enemy to only deal a bunch of damage without getting any kills, and usually that person can just take teleporter as well. Similar to this, you can place teleporter at a safe distance away and teleport to and from a fight to avoid damage. This can get a little difficult with one hand though, because you're trying to continue dealing damage while kind of spamming the interact button. A fun thing to do that I think most people kind of found by now, and that I kind of stole from Stevo, is to just place 3 turrets on the ground and teleport them all behind the enemy. I also use Tilly as a way to just teleport 1 turret by a bit of a high ground to check if anyone's up there. If the enemy Widow is being a bit aggressive, I'll put a teleporter by her but won't go through. Most enemy Widows will just get distracted by it, assuming that you're about to come through. If I do need to go through, I'll place a turret on the ground through it, and then I know that she has to look down at the turret to deal with that, and then I can safely get through without getting headshot. I'll also sometimes just use a Telly as a distraction in general. When the rework was first announced, they mentioned using Telly to save people in grav. However, Telly takes half the length of grav to set up, so usually by the time you get Telly up, everyone's already dead. It's still worth trying, but it's extremely difficult to pull off. Also, since Telly spawns 1 meter in front of you or directly below you in some situations, you need to place it towards the center of grav to allow your teammates to actually use it. Otherwise, you'll be the only one who can use it, and there's no point in being alive if you're the only one there in a 1v6. You can also teleport Torbjorn's turret. The nice thing about this is that Tilly can actually be placed in areas Torb's turret can't. This includes fence posts, small surfaces, and high grounds that Torb just usually can't reach. You can also teleport it to safety when needed, or teleport it into battle once it's fully built in a safe area. Sometimes you can manage to bait ults to go for you if you just stand on top of a teleporter and teleport away at the last second. It's usually best against Junk Tire or Doomfist ult. Just keep in mind when they try to bait your bait. Lastly, when you use a teleporter, you teleport in the direction you're facing. This also applies to buildings, which means you can place a teleporter at a corner and throw turrets from a safe area around it. As for her ult, there are a few ways to use it. Just to note though, you can't judge how well the ult was based off of how much damage it blocked. Most people aren't going to just shoot enemies behind a barrier because, well, that's dumb. Most damage dealt to it is either damage that was never going to hit anyone anyway, like missed shots, or splash damage. The important thing to look for with her ult is just the context of how it was used. For example, one common use is to block enemy ults. In this context, the simple way to understand if the barrier did its job is to just see if the ult was blocked. The enemy Doomfist ults, I'll throw down my ult and tell my team to dance around the shield. Doomfist is forced to make a decision on which side he lands on, since his ult only deals damage to the side that contains his center point. If 51% Doomfist is on the left side, even though 49% will be on the right, only the left side will take damage. The most common way to use Symmetra's ult is to split the match in half. Even if the enemy hasn't ulted yet, it still provides the same cover that a shield tank would, but in a global area. Anytime I have a Bastion on either Point A Horizon or Lijiang Tower Night Market, I like to teleport them to the high windows and then ult to give them a huge line of sight with protection. Anything that hides underneath them is left for me to kill, so then we just protect each other. I'll also sometimes use my ult as a way to protect my turrets from being destroyed if they're on the other side of a hard choke. It forces the enemy to deal with 3 turrets without an easy way of destroying them. The last example I can think of is to block off snipers. It may seem like a waste since you're not really giving your team that shield, but if you block the sniper's line of sight, it either effectively takes that person out of the fight and turns it into a 5v6, or forces them to move to a poor position to get in front of it, and then your team can easily deal with them. Now hopefully this helps any other disabled players out there. This may come off as just another Symmetra how-to guide, but this is done with the intention of being indirect, so Symmetra players don't have to deal with being overwhelmed in a fight. It felt very overwhelming when I first started playing the new Symmetra, and I didn't really want to play her that much because it became extremely confusing to play. I think just having a video here for anyone else that is in the same situation might help them a little bit, just to see how someone else like them has managed it. I hope this helps for anyone out there, and that's about it. Bye.